this is, I think, the most efficient farm strategy I have ever used. Hi, it's Lerald, and it has been a while again. Just like with the last video, I had this one about half finished, and then a hurricane came through town and knocked out the electricity, except this time the power outage lasted for an entire week. It sucked way worse than the first time. I really hope this doesn't happen again. So there's a lot of anticipation built up for the next PoE League and the PoE 2 early access release that's coming in the middle of next month, I guess, and I'm very excited about it, and that's all cool and good. It's basically the end of Settler League now, the dead part, and that's okay, right? I'm just kind of having fun playing around with some potential farm strats, things I might consider using early on in the next league, and I think this one has really high potential as a sleeper farm strategy. Also still pretty good right now. So with that being said, algorithm stuff, like, subscribe, blah, 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 let's get right into it. So this strategy is all about Abyss, which is a league mechanic that I'm well acquainted with from not really liking it, but it's something I had seen recommended in the comments section a lot over the past month. And like I said, I don't really like Abyss, or at least I didn't like Abyss before I started. I think of it as slow, and that's really the only problem I have with it. But that is enough, right? It's PoE. It's slow, that's enough. It's not a particularly complicated mechanic. It's basically just a thing that moves around and spawns dudes. And it really spawns a lot of dudes, so on that front, it is pretty good. But spawning the dudes takes a while, so it's just not the best mechanic in terms of like currency per hour, or XP per hour, or clear speed, or just anything that's related to time. It does spawn a lot of rares though. That's cool, but rares were nerfed in patch 3.25, so it's not really all that great that it spawns a bunch of rares. I think magic monsters are actually more valuable than rares in patch 3.25 because they drop a lot of stuff and there's so many of them, and there are more ways to juice their pack size than you can with rare monsters in the current state of the game, but that is something to kind of bear in mind going into future patches if there's some more ways to juice rares in the next patch, the next league. Then maybe Abyss gets a resurgence. And so, like I said, this is an insanely efficient farm strategy. Like, my returns were more than 15 times my initial investment, and that's even including some good RNG that excluding some good RNG that I got that I have totally left out. A normal good strategy, like a good one, is 2 to 3 times the initial investment. So over 15 times is absolutely buck wild. Now, this is a super cheap strategy, and that is maybe the only sticking point here. There are a couple of tweaks you could make to juice this harder and make it more expensive, but hopefully more rewarding. The only real problem there would be it would probably eat into the efficiency somewhat. Like, I don't think you're gonna triple the cost and then still make 15 times as much as you're putting in, but you've got a lot of room to work with in terms of efficiency. There's definitely a lot of potential to use this setup as kind of a base and then expand on it or shift some things around and make it your own. The bang for your buck is pretty incredible though, in part because it is late in the league and there are a lot of cheap Scarabs to go around, but also it's just because other people also dislike Abyss for all the reasons I mentioned. If my costs were tripled, I would still make this video and I would still have all the same points that I'm making right now. That's like how crazy efficient it is. I also think that early on in a league, you would be able to sell eye jewels and Stygian vices for a pretty significant profit, and that's not anything I factored in at all. So I do think the demand for the random rare items would be a lot higher in a league start situation than they are, 2.5 months into the league. So with all of that set up out of the way, let's talk a bit about Abyss. Abyss is a super simple mechanic. Like, if we just look at the wiki page for it, it's just kind of funny. Like, there we go. Here's the overview. Here's the rewards, and we're done. There's really not much to say. It spawns guys. You kill the guys gives you stuff. The end. I do have maybe 3 main tips that I would give for the way that I like to handle Abyss, and the first is if I'm doing blue altar farming, I like to clear the map and then backtrack and do all the abysses afterward. I want those quantity and rarity altars that I'm doing blue altar farming for to apply to every single abyss monster that I fight throughout the map. Now, if I were doing red altars, just trying to farm like chaos orbs and not doing quant and rarity, then I would just hit the abysses as I encounter them. Just kind of the first basic thing to handle. And then I also try not to activate 2 abysses at once. This seems like it would be more efficient or whatever, but they always move away from each other, and you don't want them to move too far away from each other or like have one of them be, well, basically, if you don't kill enough of the guys near an abyss to make it move on in a short enough span of time, then it'll just time out, it'll just despawn, die, whatever. And you don't want to run the risk of that. So I try to only just deal with one abyss at a time, even though, boy, I would love to be able to do two at once. It just doesn't really work out very well to try to do that. And then third, when the Stygian Spire spawns at the end of the abyss, like it's run through its whole course, it stops and then turns into a spire. You want to try to quickly move away from it and stop attacking so that it will spawn rare monsters. The way it does this is it shoots out several projectiles. Those will each hit the ground and spawn a pit, and then those pits spawn guys. Killing those guys will damage the spire. You can also hit the spire directly and damage it, but you kind of don't want to do that, at least initially. So back in Affliction League, people would try to milk this, I mean, including myself, would try to milk this for all it's worth, like literally get every single possible rare out of every single Stygian Spire in every single map. But that is pretty time consuming, so I try to just get the Stygian Spire to spawn a few rares, 2, 3, 4, and then, you know, just kill them and then the Spire will die, and that's okay. Considering we're not putting a lot of investment in, I think it's okay to not milk it for all it's worth. You know, this isn't Affliction League anymore, and Abyss has been nerfed since then, so it's okay. Alright, so this is the Atlas passive tree that I am going with for farming Abyss. Now, as I said before, this is obviously late in the league, so I'm not really trying to do anything with respect to Abyss Jewels or really trying to get any Stygian Vices. I mean, I collected them all, I put them all in their own separate special tab, just to kind of note that I had gotten them, but I'm not really trying to do much with the Abyss-specific drops. I'm really just using Abyss to spawn guys that then can have just regular drops, currency, Scarabs, that kind of thing. So with that being said, I am, as kind of always with farm strategies, I'm taking the whole map mod effect, top hat, all the map mod effect I can possibly get. Now, one difference here is that I am taking Chiseled Perfection because I actually just chiseled and alked these maps. I wanted to keep costs as low as I could, and I wanted to kind of treat this a bit more like a league start situation rather than running Corrupted 8 mod maps, which would have made this more profitable, but also a little bit more expensive. I just chiseled and alked all the maps and just did that until I got them over 80%. I think I counted my map costs as only about 3 chaos each, since these were all maps that I had self-farmed. And I also got a massive amount of maps while doing this. I started with like 5 or 10 atoll maps, and I think I wound up with over 50, and that was like my primary favorited map. So I think if I had to point to a weakness of Abyss beyond just the slowness, it is pretty point hungry on the tree. This top wheel up here that is kind of set up to look like an abyss path, I suppose. You know, good functional, like good form and function kind of fitting together, I suppose, but it is a whopping 16 points. Like, it's insanely point hungry to get this whole wheel here. And then, you know, they've got this wheel that gives you a lot of extra guys, a lot of extra XP to kind of compensate for how slow it is as a mechanic. That's good. Get a lot more Abyss chance out of this wheel, and you get a lot more monsters out of this wheel. But obviously, that is a lot of points that you're spending going around and just getting all of these different Abyss nodes. This one here as well, Inspired Darkness, not hugely valuable, but obviously if you can get your Stygian Spires to drop items with +1 to item level, and then you're doing them in item level 83, zone level 83 maps, you know, tier 16s, they're going to be item level 86 Stygian Spires, which right now are only worth like 10 chaos, and good luck actually selling them, but at a league start, they might be worth 10 chaos when you barely have any chaos, so that could actually be pretty valuable early on in a league, probably not so good now. Other than that, I'm taking all the normal Scarab nodes, coming up and taking Remarkable Relics, Skittering Swarms, Amplified Artifacts. This does have a lot of value with all the rares that are being spawned by the Abysses, then also having much higher Scarab drop chance. I did get a lot of Scarabs from Abyssal monsters, and some of them were quite valuable, taking Trapping Carapaces and Explorative Carapaces, again, because I like Ambush and Cartography Scarabs. Pretty normal stuff, goes really well with all the map mod effect. And then we're just doing kind of blocker nodes on the Scarabs for league mechanics that we don't want. Things like Breach, Expedition, Legion, Ritual, Blight, and Delirium. We don't want any of those Scarabs because they're just not that valuable. And then Abyss Scarabs aren't really valuable either, but we do have to have Abyss chance to spawn, so we have to leave Loved by the Sun unchecked. And that pretty much covers it for all of our nodes. I've put a couple of points in here just to get a bit more higher tier map chance, get a bit more map equity, and get more tier 17s. We didn't get a huge amount, but I think we got 4 in the span of 20 maps, which it's not too bad. Definitely got a lot of maps throughout the course of running all of these maps. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the Atlas passive tree. All right, now I'm going to move on over to Scarabs, and I ran a very basic Scarab setup for this strategy. I ran 2 Abyss Scarabs. Each of those will add an extra Abyss, so that's +2 to the total number of Abysses in each map. And then I ran an Abyss Scarab of Edifice. This has kind of 2 effects. One, it makes all of the Abysses that don't lead to the depths, which depths are quite rare now. It makes all of them spawn a Spire, so you're going to get a lot more rares out of that Spire. You're going to get a guaranteed Stygian Vice out of that Spire. And then that second line is kind of more important. It makes it all of the Abysses spawn hordes as they're traveling around, and hordes are kind of a blessing and a curse. They are basically just little crappy treasure chests on the ground, but they have kind of like heist treasure chests, kind of the safes in the reward room of heists. They just have like really high quantity or rarity to them. I think I got a divine out of the very first map, out of a horde, and then I got multiple valuable scarabs, multiple valuable divination cards out of these hordes. So annoying though it can be, I do think it is worth it to click all the hordes as you are following the Abyss around. Really do think it is worth it to do that, because I really got a lot out of them, and it maybe added like 30 seconds to each map. Probably took like a year of life off of my wrist. I will say that as a downside for it, but you know, ultimately it was very, very valuable to click all those hordes, and so I would recommend doing so. Now you have a couple of other options. You could just run 2 Abyss Scarabs of Multitudes and just get like 75% increased monsters from each Scarab. That's one way to go. Like I said before, I think magic packs, magic monsters are kind of the most valuable thing in the game right now, so I really like the Monstrous Lineage Scarab. It adds a lot of monsters, and it's super cheap. All of these Scarabs are super cheap. They're all between 1 and 2 chaos a piece, even in bulk, even off of the currency exchange. So definitely I value the Monstrous Lineage, just a really good Scarab. And then I feel the same way about Influencing Scarab of Hordes. It's just really good for adding increased pack size on Influence monster packs, which will give you more Eldritch Altars. And if I go to my Blue Abyss setup here, I'm taking all of the pack size small passives as well, that top hat there, and then these small passives here. So that's like a combined 40 in the passive tree and 40 from a Scarab, so 80% pack size on all the influence packs. Really get a lot of Eldritch Altars out of the deal. You might even get a Divine Shrine. I did. This is the 3rd video in a row where I've gotten a Divine Shrine, which is, you know, I think maybe it's compensating for the horrible RNG I've had in real life. Definitely the best RNG I've ever had in any league. I guess other than Affliction League where I got a mirror, I guess that's more luck than this. I was saying this out loud. I can't believe the RNG I've had, and then Sunset said, you know, didn't you get a mirror a few leagues ago? And I guess that is better RNG than this, but I've never had this level of sustained good RNG. And you can't be mad at me because I was without power for 7 days at 85 degree heat, so no one's allowed to be mad at me for getting lucky in this. Now, there's one other Scarab that I think is really notable here, and that would be the Horn Scarab of Nemesis. This makes it so that all the rare monsters in the zones will have 2 extra modifiers. This has a lot of good synergy. For one, it'll just make them drop more stuff, and since you are adding tons of rares through Abyss, this could be a really good addition. It also has good synergy with this Amplified Artifacts to give you another 2 mods worth of that increased chance to get Scarabs. So I think this would have probably paid off really well. This would definitely be the first thing I would throw in. I'd probably throw it in place of either the Monstrous Lineage, I think makes the most sense, or maybe just the Influencing Scarab of Hordes. But either way, I think I would throw it in place of one of those 2. The reason I didn't is it's not super expensive. It's like 7 chaos, but right now my Scarab costs are like 1 chaos each, and these are all ones that I've self-farmed as well, so technically they're all 0, but these are all like, you know, I spent 5 chaos on these 5 Scarabs, and so to add this one in would bump it from 5 up to, I guess, 11. So I would rather maybe 12, maybe they're more like 8. Either way, you know, it would definitely represent a doubling of the cost, and I wanted to keep things super cheap. But that is the first change that I would make. And then other potential changes that I have seen some people recommend is just kind of going in a beyond direction, either using beyond Scarabs or taking some of your passives that you're putting into, that I'm putting into like Scarabs and stuff, and coming over and taking Endless Tide and just beyond stuff and using the massive amount of guys that you get out of Abyss to fuel beyond as well. I think that could work really well. I kind of feel the same way about Beyond that I do about Abyss. It is a mechanic that adds a lot of guys. It can be really good, but it does slow you down. And I think adding slowdown on top of slowdown would kind of be annoying to me, annoying to a lot of people, I think. But for some people, they really, really like it. And it does make a lot of sense, right? Some people like a 15-minute map. I'm more of a 2-minute map kind of guy, but you know, definitely it's a setup that can work. All right, I already mentioned that I hand rolled all of the maps that I ran. I will just say that as far as the map device goes, I was doing, I did some farming after this. I was doing Abyss and a map device, obviously 2 extra Abysses, make the area be capable of containing Abysses, and then we're getting, I would say on average, about 5 to 6 Abysses per map. I was doing Jungle Valley as the map of choice. I don't necessarily think it's the best one. It was just something different. I think Dunes is still the best map. Dunes is good. Mesa is good. They have a better tier 17 map drop. And depending on how you've scried your divination cards around, you can run really any map. It's fine. Abyss is actually a league mechanic that can run pretty well in any map at all. But I think Jungle Valley's pretty good, but not the best. Dunes would be better. And Mesa would also, I think, be better. All right, and so now I'm going to just go ahead and jump over to my results here, and this is the cost, right? 240 chaos, which at the time of recording here, the cost of a divine is 155, so about a divine and a half spent, and I got a divine in my first map, so I think I paid for this full 20 maps of farming on the very first map, and then I got a divine shrine on the second map, and I'm not including that. 33 divines is the amount that is in my stash tab here. This dump tab here, I've got a couple of weird uniques, you know, this Unnatural Instinct, an Aegis Aurora, Duryani's Fist, fun Corrupted Tabula, very well rolled Doomfletch. Is that perfect Doomfletch? Not quite, pretty close. And yeah, this crappy Darkness Enthroned. I did get one Abyssal Depths that I went in and ran and got a very bad Darkness Enthroned. I wouldn't really recommend running all the Abyssal Depths. You can do it will slow you down a bit. Osprey's Malice, just some random stuff. And then I got, like I said, a Divine Shrine that gave 8 Divine Orbs, and I separated those out. And I have excluded those in the tab here. Like, I put in my initial Wealthy Exile value as 33, but then subtracted 8 Divines from that. Obviously, if I were to include those, then that would put me more in the, like, 13 Divines per hour. But right at 10 divines per hour was my profit range. I would say these maps took about 6 to 8 minutes to complete. Pretty wide range, just based on, I mean, really just how long the Abysses run and kind of how long it took me to clear each of them. I would say the general clear speed on a Jungle Valley is pretty fast, 90 seconds or less generally, and then it's like 30 seconds to a minute per Abyss. Definitely not 30 minutes per Abyss, although it can feel like that sometimes. So I got 93 Stygian Vices. I put those all in a separate tab, and I'm not gonna sell them. I didn't count them, but if I were to count them as 930 chaos, you know, that's a couple more divines per hour. But I'm not gonna sell them. Certainly not at this point, deep in the league. There's probably a well-rolled one in here or two, but I'm not gonna look and find out. So, you know, I still think ultimately just looking at the profit per map, we're over a divine per map, which is pretty amazing. Obviously, these are not very fast maps, right? 7 minutes a map. That's kind of the biggest issue here. The gold per hour is not great. The gold per map's not bad, 37,000 gold per map, but I can get that in maps that I clear in under 2 minutes a map just doing like domination shrine farming. And yeah, that definitely doesn't compete with this. In terms of the stuff that is valuable, it's a mix of like good divination card that I've scryed onto Jungle Valley, just random currency stuff like Voidboyne Reliquary Keys, Horn Scarab of Awakening, some Harvest Scarabs, Ultimatum Scarabs, Valdivus Puzzle Box, a lot of random chaos, a lot of random currency coming from the Hordes, a lot of Cartography Scarabs, just a lot of random junk kind of stuff that doesn't really seem like it's all that valuable on its own. Maybe an occasional like, ooh, big drop here with the Voidbond Reliquary key. But on the aggregate winds up actually adding up to be quite a lot of stuff. I think one big mistake in running Jungle Valley is that it drops Abomination maps, and if we just take a look at PoE Ninja, the value of the tier 17 maps, relatively speaking, Fortress and Sanctuary are about 100 chaos each. Ziggurat is slightly behind at 90, Abomination is 75. So if I had been doing this on Dunes or Mesa and then still gotten 4 Fortress maps, you know, that's an extra 100 chaos over what I got. That might have put me up, maybe, you know, in Wealthy Exile, put me at like the 34 Divines range instead of 33. Not really a huge difference. That's why I did Jungle Valley. Ultimately, I just felt like, let's try something different and see if this is fun. And it did wind up being pretty fun. I definitely enjoyed this. You know, again, all these summers, right? This is just my experience. Your mileage will be different from mine. You're definitely going to have different RNG, and that's okay. It might be better, might be worse, might be exactly the same. That'd be crazy, but it's possible. But definitely this is a strategy that I enjoyed and would recommend. So let's wrap things up. This absolutely made me like Abyss more than I did before I started. I really thought it was the worst league mechanic in the game, and I don't feel that way anymore. I think it's not bad. I don't think this is my favorite strategy or anything like that, but there is a lot more potential from Abyss as a good farm strategy than I had realized. I saw the comments and I said, I'll indulge them, I'll try it out and see if it's any good, and yeah, absolutely, it is. It's just so cheap. It's borderline impossible not to make money farming Abyss. Even if you're just getting random garbage from the Abyss rares, it's still good. That's really all you need to just, not even just break even, but like make a really hefty profit. I mean, like I said, I made over a Divine per map of pure profit. That's pretty nuts. My only complaint with Abyss is the spawn time on the monsters. It's just a little too slow. The amount of time that they spend crawling up out of the ground could definitely be faster, and the projectiles from the Stygian Spires are also pretty slow. I would love if I were able to just insta-kill the Spires and they would spawn all the guys that they were going to spawn. I think that's the one thing I would change about Abyss. If I were, I don't know, king of GGG for a day, I would make it so that I can mindlessly kill everything and have that be the most efficient method of farming Abyss as a league mechanic. It works for virtually every other league mechanic. You immediately go in and murder everything in Ambush or Harbinger or whatever else, so it would be nice for Abyss to kind of function the same. You know, sure, I guess there's some value in variety, but boy, I sure do love I love me some killing, so it'd be nice to just continue killing with Abyss. Either way, it's a pretty good league mechanic. I had a lot of fun with this farm strategy, and I absolutely would recommend it. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your drops. Bye.